So after a few hours of work, this is the finished raised bed garden. And what we're going to do, well, let me back up a little bit. This is 8 by 8. And I made it so Pat can walk into it easily and be able to tend things right here. She's halfway in, this way's halfway, and this way's halfway. So what we're going to do is that on this particular one, we're going to do a thing called Hugelculture. And what Hugelculture is a way of gardening that was been done for thousands of years, but really reinvented back in the 70s. But what it is you're putting layers of compost into your raised beds or your raised bed that's on flat ground. First layer being logs. I have plenty of logs over here. There's some logs here, and if you look around, I have some logs that are down that have already started to decompose, and those go in the bottom and will make the base of what the raised garden bed will be. This decomposing is much like you see right here in the woods. Those piles that are there, these long piles that I have in the woods all around me are actually dead beech trees and dead hemlock trees that have fallen down over the years, because this property was never ever logged going back to at least 200 years. So all the stuff has fallen down and rotted, and then new stuff has come out of them. So what we're going to do back here, sorry for the quick buzz, what we're going to do back here is that we're going to put in some logs, probably up to the second board. This will be dead logs and dead branches and so forth, and that'll become a base as it decomposes to constantly fertilize the garden as it goes. On top of that base, we're going to be putting some old leaves, and you see we have plenty of leaves around here that come down, so all these old leaves are going to go across of it. Oop, the wrong way. All these leaves will come across, and we'll put that on top of the bed here, maybe a couple inches, and probably up to middle of the third board that you see right here, and that'll give us a layer of decomposing material. Next layer is going to be like a humus layer, or that we can get for our humus, sorry, not humus, humus that we can get from the woods, or I've got some material in that blue bucket. Let me walk over to it. This was from our recycle station. We can get as much compost as we want. What they do is they have all the compost that comes in. Let me move this out of the way. And this is the compost that comes back from the landfill station. We can get as much as we want, many times. And since I don't have my pickup truck anymore, I now have to use a tote and a plastic bag to tote all the the recycled material that we have here. And there's piles and piles and piles of it. There'll be enough. They're building a new batch right now that we'll have for next year. That we'll have ready, and they turn it over and all through the winter, and they actually load it for you if you want to, if you had a pickup truck. So anyway, that layer will go in probably up to the top of the third board, to the top there, and then on top of that will be soil, potting soil. Or not actually potting soil, but ground soil. I bought some cheap bags of soil over at Walmart to put on top of here. Now you're going to probably ask us why I have all this dirt around here. Why don't I use my tractor, which is over there right now? See it next to the camper. There's my tractor. This is why don't we use the tractor and bring it over and dump it into it? Well, unfortunately, we did this because I'm standing right on the leach field for the septic. If you notice, there's a little thing on the tree over there, little ribbon, and if I turn directly around, there's another ribbon on that tree right there, and there's my pipe that I use to dump the camper, and my septic tank's right about here, and this right here is my leach fields. Well, I can't drive the tractor over it, so I figured, so instead we won't forget about what's here, we'll put this garden on top of it. It'll support the way of the garden, no problem, but not if vehicles going across it. So that's what we're going to be doing. And then eventually this will be the front yard. The cabin we're going to put up is going to be right there. The logs are going this summer, are going to be moved away and milled. The cabin's going to go in that area right there, and that'll get us to look out onto the pond. And as you see real close, I get move over a little bit. Right there is the infamous walkway to nowhere. I kept adding and adding and adding on that walkway, and the water kept getting further and further out. So, and again, I'm right where those branches at the very end of the pond. I still have another 5 feet to go because the pond is one out a little further. So, but that's the walkway there, and there's the bridge of Terabithia right there. You see a little part of it right there. That goes over the ravine and walks out going that way, down the hill, out the walkway, and out to the pond. So anyway, that's what we're doing. Sorry about that. I'll come back and I'll, as I go in stages, and I'll let you know what's happening. See what it looks like. Okay, so here's the first layer, rotten logs. Heaven knows I have enough of these around here. And what these will do is serve as the base for composting. They'll last for years underneath, and they'll add more nutrients to the soil. The only thing I'm concerned about is if anything close to the sides is going to eat away in the sides of this thing. But we'll see what happens. Next layer coming up is going to be some dead branches and some leaves on the branches, and then we'll get the rake leaves and so forth. Back in a bit. So here we have the first layer. I have leaves, I have brush, I have large logs in there, as you can see. And now I'm going to start with the second half of the experiment and add these leaves into it. Be back later. Okay, so the layer of leaves are in. I squished them down, tucked them down underneath all the sticks down below and filled it in. Took quite a lot of leaves to fill this thing. And it will mat down even more, but I try to get it as compact as I could. And so what'll happen now is we're going to put on, they say put on a layer of the humus and the compost and then the regular soil, but I got some soil that I dug out. I'm going to put that on top of the leaves here, try to save some of the compost from falling down through if there are any gaps. So I'll put a layer of inch or two of that on, and then we'll just layer it up with the compost and then the topsoil. And hopefully we'll be good to go. Be back in a bit. Okay, so I've got almost the last layer in. This is the compost that we picked up at the transfer station in town, and I've got about probably a 4-inch layer of this. Kind of made of everything, as you can see. Get some worms in here too, it's kind of cool. And we had a couple old gloves and pieces of glass, but we took those out, so we're good. So now next layer going on, or last layer, will be a layer of topsoil. And we'll see how that goes. And the experiment continues. Back again. Okay, so finally the weekend project is done. So here is an 8x8 planter, and we're doing a process called Hugelculture. And as just to reiterate what we did before, is we have a layer of logs and brush and so forth on the bottom as far as like a compost, and then we have some leaves on top of that. And on top of that, I have some compost that I got from the landfill that they've been brewing for about a year. And on top of that, I put some topsoil mixed up with some more manure and fertilizer, and here we go. So we have some peppers that we started, and some tomatoes, and we have some beans over here, and all kinds of good stuff, and more that's over out back. So hopefully we'll see what happens. Hopefully it'll be a good year for this. Also next to it, I planted a couple little smaller ones, raised beds. And this particular one here is going to be asparagus, or is asparagus. We have about 10 shoots in here, or 10 roots. And so it's going to take a couple of years for it to come up. We know at least where they are. And over on this side is the beginning of an herb garden. I have some cilantro, some rosemary, and some parsley. Whoops, sorry, parsley here, rosemary and cilantro right there. And we'll put some oregano in a little later. But this will be the garden that we use when we start cooking a little bit. Walking over to the side here, we said, well, let's go one more step. And so we have our little, when we had quite honestly, it was the septic hoops that were delivered. They were delivered on a pallet like this, so I cut it in half, and inside here is strawberries. This is going to be our strawberry bed with some organic compost that we have. And we have about 15 shoots of strawberries in here, so they're going to take over this area here, and we'll have some strawberries. Over in the little flower garden, we have some flowers that are starting to come up from last year. They did survive the winter, and we planted some rhubarb because I love strawberry rhubarb pie, and some new ones this year, some bleeding hearts, and some different flowers we have coming through. So hopefully they're all going to come up. It's been very, very wet this year. It's just starting to dry out, and the pond's just starting to go down. And so we're trying to get things working and starting to get something growing. It's so late right now. Next step we have is that guy right there, brush pile. We're going to burn this one. We have one behind the camper right now, but this one here we're going to burn out. We left the other one for the animals and for our fires at night there, but I just want to get this cleaned out and get it done, and then I can take care of the logs that I pulled on last time. We can't take everything out of here because of the shoreline rules that they have. Up to 100 feet from the shoreline of any body of water, you only take a certain percentage of tree that you have to leave. So we're trying to thin things out, take the dead ones out and so forth. It's a process, but we'll be all set. Next step up is these guys here, the logs that they're left over. These will be moved out back, milled up. Some used for turnings, some used for woodworking, some used for flooring, some used for building a new cabin. And we'll go from there. So, thank you much for watching, and we'll catch you later. Bye.